Hi guys. Going to talk a little bit about stories tonight. It's in fact story time. We're going to tell some stories while we're actually telling a story. Keep that in mind for the end here. So it sort of occurred to me the other day, reading books, playing games, all those sorts of things that everybody's doing a little bit more of thanks to the lockdown and so forth. That what became really successful over the last 10 or 20 years was sort of the RPGification, role playing gamification of almost all games, and unfortunately, to some extent, a lot of science fiction nowadays. Um, in that some of these tropes and some of the writing techniques that are particularly unfortunate in role playing games are creeping into science fiction where they're entirely inappropriate. But that's an entirely side issue. Um, I what I wanted to talk about mostly was that the reason why all this stuff is creeping in has to do with an article that I read today that was sort of like uh, people enjoy your products more when there's a ritual associated with its use, right?
Right.
And so that sort of comes down to that's an obvious mechanism for building emotional investment in a product, right? But a ritual is just a story.
Well,
Okay.
and it's the same kind of sector in your brain that maps to I paid for a thing, therefore it was valuable, and therefore I'm more invested in this product,
Yeah,
and
I
I will
spend more time
continue.
on this, therefore it is more valuable.
Yeah,
That's
and
really all
and
there is to it.
basically all that the ritual is in the brain is making further investment by the user, whether it's time, attention, money, whatever gets your product more attention. Basically, you're
Colonizing minds.
yeah, you're colonizing that mind with your
You're living
product.
rent free in people's heads. The more you can do that, the
Yeah,
better,
yeah.
right?
Well, as Mike Dean said, the guy who wins has his works in the libraries of more people than anyone else.
Yeah, and certainly when you look at the great philosophers, there's a reason they're great. Everybody's read them.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the same with really good software. Everybody's used it, and most people are familiar with the story of Microsoft. Most people are familiar with the story of Apple. Not as many people are familiar with the story of how Excel and Word and all those happened, but I'll bet you more people are familiar with that than, say, the story of how Stack Overflow got its start.
Right.
You know,
Or even nowadays, how semiconductors became a big thing in the modern economy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of my early jobs I've mentioned on this stream before is Texas Instruments, and they weren't the first to come up with the idea of a semiconductor. They were just the first to do it and commercialize it. But that means that they sort of have the story of, yeah, we did semiconductors before anybody else. You
Yeah,
know,
which is a big story for them. Now, of course, nowadays, for the most part, it's like, who cares? But
Yeah, when Apple, their sort of story the whole time has been we've brought computing to the common man, first with the early Apples and then with the phones, right?
right, which is somewhat hilarious now because they're the more expensive end of that sort of lineup. With that, hey, it's for the common man, but it's the most expensive.
But to be entirely frank, their original apples were not particularly cheap either. When you
Right,
consider,
right. It's just about that first mover advantage, and that's part of their prestige. That's part of the reality distortion field that Jobs once had.
yeah, and you look at the Microsoft story, it's more like, no, we actually brought it to the common man.
Oh
you know?
yeah, certainly as far as the numbers are concerned, that's definitely true. But
Yeah,
it's less so nowadays as far as desktops, that sort of thing. But that's mainly due to desktops sliding into irrelevancy.
yeah, and you look at like the origin story of Linux. He mentioned like this is by hackers for hackers at the very start, and it's
Oh
sort
yeah,
of
it
like
was a Minix hacker kind of origin story.
yeah, and that sort of colored it the whole time. It's probably a lot of why it's taken. Number one, it got popular in the first place because nobody was serving the hacker market and at
Oh
the time
no,
at all.
not at all.
But also, that's the reason why it hasn't taken over totally yet. It had to colonize the mind share of not only developers
Right,
but users
right.
before it could do that. And not everybody was comfortable with the hacker mindset. But now in the hustle economy, we all hack it.
Oh
You
yeah,
know?
yeah. Certainly with the rise of more gig-based stuff, the 1099 basically becoming more of a thing for most people, and the stability that was offered by many jobs basically being gone. Uh, that sort of hustle, that sort of drive that were present in some of the hackers back in the 70s and 80s, and even early 90s, is really coming back in a big way.
Yeah,
So.
And that sort of gets down to the moral of the story that I was talking about in the very beginning of this. That, really, while we're telling this story about stories people are telling for their business, for a variety of good reasons, we're telling a story about our own business, right?
Right.
All of this YouTube channel, all of these things are about building this story, are about building this brand, are about making Troglodyne a real thing, right?
Yeah.
It's
because
the same
until you tell the story, it is not real.
Yeah, and it's the same literally on a personal level. You don't become a developer. You don't become a success until you actually tell that story and you're familiar with the idea of, you know what, I'm going to be X and I'm going to do everything I need to do to actually be X.
Right. It's why when people are saying, well, how do I become this thing that I want to be? Fake it till you make it is actually a workable strategy.
Yeah, the fact is, it's not so much faking it as internalizing it and building an emotional investment in the idea of you being that.
Right. It's the same reason why writing out either devotional phrases or some sort of affirmation in the mornings works for a lot of people to change behaviors and habits, that sort of thing. I will be doing X, I will be doing Y, whatever, but I do write that I'm going to do that every day, and I write it down, and well, what do you know? My mind is, focused on it, and you find ways to make it happen. Even things that seem impossible for your current condition, there are people that have done that sort of stuff daily, and within 5 years, they've accomplished their dreams.
Yeah, and sort of what I'm doing right now for Troglodyne is TCMS, as you may be well familiar with. That's really sort of the origin story we're building, is that we just really don't like the way most CMSs go. They just don't have an integrated approach. For everybody has all these social platforms. They don't have a good answer for, well, how do I have backups for everything? How do I have something that serves the exact same purpose? Not only from the angle of I need a blog, that's well covered, but the idea of I also need a tube site. I also need a Instagram equivalent.
I also need a link log kind of thing, Twitter equivalent.
Yeah, essentially what I want is something that is capable of being an 80% solution for all of these things for your own personal brand, because everybody's going to have to build their brand. And that's where I really want to go with this, is making this a super tool for you to build your own brand and to bring in your own mailing lists, to build your own following and all that stuff, because I haven't seen anybody really build an open source tool for actually doing that.
Right. For the most part, it's been paid solutions, whether that be like Squarespace or Wix, that make those sorts of custom solutions, remailers and that sort of thing, which are a big deal. And I don't think remailers are going away anytime soon, mostly because of spam blacklisting and that sort of thing, just on mailing lists in general. Mostly due to people reporting the person as a spam or something like that, but that's a tangent as well.
Yeah, but the whole point is that I think that the best way that you can prove out an open source solution in something like this is to build the solution and then use it to actually do these methods of making money. And that's sort of where some of these videos are going to be going in the future. Is I'm going to try being a drop shipper. I'm going to try doing SEO affiliate marketing. I'm going to build a software product and be a micro ISV using this stuff.
Right. Because if we can do that, and basically you dog food it just doing this serial entrepreneur kind of approach, then you can prove out that, yes, this actually works in this thing because I used it for it and I wrote it for it.
Well, I can find out what is actually useful to these things and what is actually important and what is not. I've been talking to several people who actually do these things, and we'll probably get some interviews at some point with those people. And I've got some great advice as to what I need to prioritize developing and things like that. But it takes a while for me to get from A to B, because we got lots of responsibilities. We got a website we're running and all those sorts of things in the meantime. But big things are coming, and this is going to be a good story, and I think it's going to have a very happy ending for me and all of you out there watching our videos.
Right.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed it.
Always hit like and subscribe. Please hit the PayPal link, send us some money if you like these videos, and always, of course, you can shoot us an email, hit us up on the social links on troglodyne.net. If there's some sort of consultation you want to book with us, just let us know and we'll see what we can do for you.
All right, have a nice night, guys. Bye.